going to look at how all the transfers have affected Brighton with a couple of high-level statistics, but we're going to start with a tactical review. Before we get into that, if you enjoyed the video, smash the like button, share it on social media, and subscribe. With that, let's get into it. So in deep build-up, Brighton play with this 2-4 shape where the centre midfield is very narrow and very deep, and the centre-back splitting. This was against a 4-4-2 press, where in the first 20 minutes or first half, they really tried to press intensely and man mark. We see some of that here with Cunha, Fabio Silva, the centre midfielders. This was to try and prevent Brighton from playing those short passes into the centre midfielders, but it created a ton of space for the centre forwards for Brighton to operate just in behind the midfield. This presented a huge problem for Dawson and Kilman, as well as also the fullbacks, because as the centre backs for Wolves push into this space, it creates a ton of space for the fullbacks to defend centrally, where the likes of Matoma and March can run in behind. And so we see here an attempt by Steele to play the ball in the air to Caiceido, with Welbeck also deep with him, and the wide midfielders higher up threatening in behind. And we see all that space created by the Wolves centre-backs having to step out due to just how high the midfield are. Fortunately, on this occasion, Wolves are able to defend it and Brighton get back in possession with Steele, and then they do exactly the same thing again, except this time Steele is able to drive the ball centrally into Caiceido, and Dawson is able to win possession despite the amount of pressure Wolves tried to put on Brighton. They won back possession in Brighton's defensive third very few times. Fortunately for Brighton, there's a little bit of a mix-up, and that allows Welbeck to get back in possession and start a counter-attack. Counter-attacks were really key, or attacks in transition were really key for Brighton, either, as we see in this case, from a turnover, but also it can be from corner kicks, beating Wolves' press, etc. Of course, with the fact that the Wolves centre-backs have had to step out, that has forced the rest of the Wolves defence to have to narrow, and with that, the wide midfielders for Brighton also narrow into more dangerous centre-forward positions. Fortunately for Wolves, Welbeck's shot is deflected and Sarr is able to claim. Sarr here is looking to try and start a counter-attack quickly, which he tried on a few occasions due to just how relentless Brighton's press in Wolves' defensive third was, which often forced them into clearances. So we get to see a little bit of that press here, where we actually have a 3-1 in defence and a 4-2 up top, as Webster, the right centre-back, pushes out into a CDM position, allowing the rest of the Brighton players to essentially go man for man. With him pushing out, that also makes a pass into Cunha here, who's exceptionally good at dribbling and driving into space, makes the pass into him more difficult. Sarr tries to play over the press into Neto, which he tried on a few occasions, but unfortunately the ball often went straight out of play. Okay, we have Wolves back in possession, deep again, trying to build up in a 4-3. We have Nunez, the left winger, dropping off the line and coming more central to try and overload against Gilmour and Gross. And from here, with his dribbling ability and willingness to drive, they're hoping they would be able to overload this space and then eventually get the ball out towards the right hand side for the likes of Neto and Semedo. Wolves retain possession here. We get to see what they try both now and later in the game when they have the likes of Sarabia on the pitch, where one of your forwards, just as we saw with Cunha earlier, will drop. Again, they'll be tracked, but the hope is they'll be able to then link with a player in the wide space. Unfortunately, Silva isn't able to control the ball and Brighton get back in possession. With that, we get to see Brighton's initial midfield shape, where essentially it's 2-4, just as it is deep, except as they progress up a side, typically the left hand side, allowing the right back to stay as a right centre back and give more defensive balance. That allows Estupiñán to essentially act as a left winger or support for Mitoma. Mitoma, who really didn't need any support for his goal. Okay, so fortunately or unfortunately for Wolves, a key tool in their attacking toolkit was Cunha and his driving runs, which we get to see on this occasion. Initially, after Sarr trying to play a ball over that 4-4-2 man marking press by Brighton, which initially is a little bit botched, but Wolves are able to win the ball back. And then we see that driving ability by Cunha, standing up his man and driving beyond him. Unfortunately, just as in the United game, he just isn't able to play that final pass and really get his team into a goal-threatening position. Given I have detracted so much from Wolves' deep build-up, I thought it might be nice to show 39th minute where they build up deep with that 2-3 shape. So Gomez isn't quite as deep initially, and they have Nunez drop later as Brighton press higher. This gives Nunez more space, and with that, he's able to combine in the left-hand side, and Wolves find themselves in Brighton's defensive third. Unfortunately, they still aren't able to knit it all together and create a threatening chance. Okay, so moving on to the 60th minute, we get to look at Wolves' 3-1 midfield. Initially starting here with a pair of Lemina and Nunez, who's now a centre midfielder. Similar to Brighton, as one fullback pushes up, the other will tuck in to more of a centre-back position. So on this occasion, with the ball going down the right-hand side, Semedo will be able to push up and support Neto in trying to combine in that space. And then they'll also have one of the centre forwards typically try and come across as well and try and overload that space. There was also the onus on one of the centre midfielders, initially Gomez, but then later Nunez, to try and support or cover for the fullback. On this occasion, it's quite threatening, and Semedo is able to whip quite a dangerous ball in, but no Wolf player is able to connect, and due to Estepinian's foul, it goes to a free kick. So we mentioned earlier Brighton's willingness to play in transition, and I think there's a really good example here in the 24th minute where they're building up deep. We have that same shape that we showed earlier with the 2-4, really narrow centre midfielders, really deep. This is when Wolves were really trying to man mark and press with intensity. They're able to actually win it on this occasion, but then immediately lose the ball as they try and turn it into an attacking opportunity, which then Brighton turn into their own attacking opportunity with some slick 1-2s. They're really, really good at controlling the tempo by constantly putting their foot on the ball, slowing down Wolves, and then speeding the tempo up as they need it. So we see that here with a couple of nice interchanges between the midfield and Enciso, and then eventually a longer ball into Matoma, again with a far-sided wide midfielder narrowing as the Wolves midfield have been reduced in number as Dawson has tried to push out to help regain possession. And then finally, I thought it'd be good to just show that 3-2 shape. At this point, we've got Veltman at right centre-back, right back out of possession, and Dawood and Gilmour as your centre midfielders. Now they're basically playing Estepinian as an almost out-and-out in possession left winger, which allows the left winger out of possession in Lallana to be able to become more of a number 10 and roam across the centre of the park and just help combine with Dawood and Gilmour. Okay, and with that, let's have a look at a few headline stats. Okay, so given how much praise Brighton has got, given their fast start and the fact that they're sitting pretty at the top of the Premier League, despite having a number of players that we considered key move on to supposedly bigger and better clubs, I thought it'd be nice to just have a look at a couple of their stats. Of course, we've got a small sample here in that we've just had 2 matches thus far, so it'd probably be better to draw initial conclusions more at match day 10, but I still thought it'd be interesting to have a look. Although of course, the huge caveat, everything here is against Wolves, who really struggled to score, and then a newly promoted team. Probably that's the reason that we're having some stats be probably different from what we would expect. So okay, so a number of these stats that are probably influenced by the quality of opponent that Brighton have faced thus far, in my opinion, is probably errors per 90, conversion rate, and definitely goals. But a lot of the other stats I'd say are looking quite healthy. They're shooting from closer, they're creating more chances per match, they've got a higher XG per shot, although again, this is mostly probably influenced by their opponent. I think the thing that worries me most is just XG again. This one is definitely the one that worries me the most. This is somewhat inflated by the penalty in the Luton game, but regardless, I still think it's not a favourable stat. I think looking at the XG for Brighton against Wolves in 2022-23 season and 23-24 season, see just how close the XG actually is, and I feel like this passes the sanity test just because we know that Wolves aren't great at converting their goals, but we see that they actually do stay relatively in step with Brighton. They just can't seem to beat them. Given the way that Brighton build up, obviously with those really deep midfielders, I thought it'd be interesting to see how well are they able to break that first line of press and get into that transition that they really love. And I feel like when you have a look at the possession in their defensive area versus last season, given the fact it's Luton and Wolves, they've actually had to keep the ball. I use the word had here because I would presume you'd want to have the possession typically higher up the pitch, obviously in transition, but regardless, they're having it more in their defensive penalty area, and just overall they're having less possession in the opponent's attacking third and attacking penalty area than last season. So one would worry, of course, if this trend was to continue, that might be a bit of a problem. Anyway, let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please give it a thumbs up, maybe comment down below and share on social media. And with that, we're out.